What's going on, guys? I'm Logan, and welcome to It's Call Time, the podcast where stagehands and techs talk about our chaotic, sleep-deprived stories behind the scenes. I have our first guest today, and he is my good buddy Blake Joblin. He will give you a little background on his life in our industry, how he got into it, and exactly what he does. Blake, why don't you give yourself a little intro, my man?
Yeah, what's up, everybody? Yes, I'm Blake. Been mostly an audio guy, can dabble in production management and tech directing, and a little bit of everything, audio, video, lighting, anything that's got circuitry in it. I've been doing this for kind of, more professionally for about maybe 13 years now, I want to say. Started out in, I guess my origin story is in 5th grade. At our school play, and or actually musical rather, and my father kind of was pushing me and to go hey, you don't want to do acting, you don't want to do sports, why don't you maybe try see if they need a crew for this. So I went to the music director there and was like, hey, I might give this a shot. He's like, oh, sure, And so in the at my elementary school was a Cafegymtourium. Part cafeteria, part gym, part auditorium, which
it's a hell of a combination.
So I was probably about 10 years old, doing sitting behind some I don't even no name brand, mixer in a freaking cloth, wrapped case there, they, whatever got installed, probably 10 years before I even went there. And I enjoyed that, and then kind of went off into middle school and stuck with kind of tech theater stuff, doing sound for the musicals and whatnot, and then eventually went off to high school, and it was good timing for me because actually my freshman year of high school was the first year that my high school actually had a full-time tech director on their staff, and this guy, I'm still friends with him to this day. He's more into lighting, and I was more into sound. He was like, oh, perfect. We complement each other well. And so kept with that in high school, and then started getting a little bit into more pro stuff at venues later on in my high school career. Actually, I reached out to a venue I spent most of my time at, and said, hey, I'm interested in this. And I actually, first time I worked there, wasn't a paid gig, but I
intern.
There was a battle of the bands that I was on stage for, helping with changeovers and getting all the kids hooked up to their amps right and whatnot. And they saw me and said, oh, you're pretty good at this. You want to come here a bit. And I started I interned for, probably a few months, mostly on audio. And then my sort of big break came, I guess, if you would call it that, when I was shadowing the venue monitor engineer for a band, and long story short, tempers rose, and the tour and this local audio guy started kind of butting heads a bit, and the local audio guy said, all right, screw you guys, I'm going home. And he walked off, went to his car and drove off, and I'm standing there stage left, and the tour looks at me and goes, so you know how to run this? And I was like, I'll give it a shot, sure. I can do what I can. I mixed monitors for a sold out show there, and they were like, all right, you're pretty good at this. Why don't we hire you? And I was like, sure. I'm just a senior in high school, right? I still go to school. They're like, oh, okay. Whenever you can, come through here. And so that's how I really started.
Dude, I'm not gonna lie. I knew a little bit of your story from working with you over the years, and it's you and Brett, people who have been in this, or even I know Staub, he was in it for in high school times. Mm-hmm. I had friends my freshman year who were in they called it tech crew or fucking whatever, and they tried to get me in it, and I was like, I don't think I'm gonna be into that kind of thing. Look at me now. But it's such an interesting thing to have people who saw it at that young of an age and they knew. And I know you also went to college, correct? Did you really want to go for live stuff, or did you want to go for more studio?
my college experience was interesting. So, because like I was saying, it was kind of toward my end of my high school career that I kind of realized what I was kind of good at and might want to do. And so, yeah, I first started looking at colleges for like audio production, mainly studio stuff, just because that's what, I feel like most colleges have, like, a recording studio. Most colleges might not have like a full on live events venue. And so I first started looking at going into that, and then kind of like stopped and was like, well, I've kind of already got my foot in the door for this career. Like, is it really worth it to go like to school for straight up just like tech? And I was like, yeah, maybe not. And I actually then found I ended up going to Pace University in Manhattan, and they actually had a pretty new program at the time that was called Arts and Entertainment Management. That's what I went to school for. So I actually got a business degree, but kind of essentially a concentration in like, entertainment industry stuff.
That's pretty sick. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. Yeah. Then all the while, like basically learning about the business side of it, I was literally taking Metro North trains back and forth from the city. And would basically do gigs for a long weekend, come back and do classes and rinse and repeat.
That's the grind. It's like a lot of people don't even realize when you are in this industry, you not just sacrifice a lot of your own free time because, it's all right, I know I have to do this. So any of my free time that there are gigs, I'm going to be going and doing that. And then, like you were saying, when you think about school versus that, you had the balance. A lot of people either want to go into it straight from school, because I know plenty of people, we know Kyle, who he went to school and it was more studio stuff, and then he ended up coming into our world and we abducted him into ours. Right. And it's not like a school versus no school thing. I believe each kind of teach certain things, and you have the controlled environment of the school, and then the uncontrolled environment of what we do in the live world. When you decided to kind of step foot into this, did you think that you were going to stick with just audio when you got into it, or did you think you were going to try and expand?
I think when I first started, I thought I would stick into just audio. But as I got my foot more in the door and kind of like saw like, oh, I could, figure this stuff out as well. Cause growing up, I was the total like computer nerd, at the school, like, literally middle school. We had a local, essentially like morning broadcast. There was like a live, like, I don't know, 7-minute, like, here's what's happening at the school today thing. And I was like the kid that ran that. And I literally completely nerded out, and I figured out how on this old video switcher to get like a lower third that had like, a little ticker going across and people's names for like the anchors and whatnot. And I was like, yeah, and I think I'm a bit fortunate too that in the era that I've grown up with and that we've grown up with, where the transition has become more to kind of a computerized, industry with that, where, obviously you've got analog versus digital, and that's kind of that transition happened like right as I was growing up with it. So
yeah, it's really funny because when you say analog versus digital, a lot of people won't really know what we mean. And it's like, I remember when I first started at Toads, they had a big Allen and Heath console that at the end of the night, they would always make a joke like, all right, you got to zero it out now.
Yep.
And it's like, now you could just be like, all right, I'm going to shut the console down. And then all the faders and everything they go down. But when you turn it on, it'll return to whatever scene you did have.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the interesting thing. And when, you get new consoles and stuff, very much like how we've had, the luck of getting over the last few years at our venues,
mm-hmm.
when you have to learn a new console, is it kind of like the same steps going through each console? If it's the same, if you're going from like an Avid to another Avid, or if you're going like how we have the Digicos,
mm-hmm.
we had the training through, shout out to 11th Hour and DNR and all of them wonderful folks over there. They have access to that stuff so that you guys can go up there and get kind of like up to speed on stuff, because I know there is a difference. Obviously, I'm more stage and lighting, but I've asked you guys questions always because as a stage manager, I believe that I need to have the versatility of being able to help you guys. And what is your, I guess, uh, steps when you would have to learn a new console, or if you walk up to a situation where it's a console that you really haven't been on before?
Hmm. Yeah. So for me, I mean, I guess the analogy I would make is like it's like kind of like having Mac and PC, sort of. It's like, if you grew up using a PC, like, and you get a Mac, you'll figure it out. You're like, oh, okay. Well, instead of Control C and Control V is my copy paste, it's now Command C, Command V. Like, it's like the tasks are the same. It's just how you go about it is different. And that's why, for me at least, I mean, whenever possible, and obviously, sometimes you just get thrown on a gig and you're in front of the console and got no time. And obviously that's, pressure's not at that point, but if possible, I literally have said to venues, I'm like, hey, can I just come in on an off day? Like, you don't even have to pay me. I just like, this is like furthering my career to be able to sit in front of this console and just go through it without the pressure of having to be working for the gig later, and just go through with a mic, just going right into it and like talking into it and going through, okay, this is where this is, and this is where this is, and okay, now I can figure this out. And then the nice thing now being in the digital age is that once you've figured it out and kind of built a file, say that file goes on your USB, anytime you run to that console, you load that up and you know exactly where you're starting from.
See, that's another advantage of digital versus analog, is we have stuff like that, like between, because, when I come to the building that you typically work at, they have an AVO for a lighting console. And then at the building that I typically am at, we have the MA. And they're the same but different, each have the same capabilities, but it's about how you go through the console in doing them. And, one is, better at certain things than the other. And it's finding the nuances of the consoles and how, user wants to use them. But it's the kind of the fun thing of that, or when we have a challenging day, kind of like in the day that I had to come to the venue that you were at all the time and still are, they were like, oh yeah, it's an easy day, don't worry about it. And then they hand me the fucking like 3 pages of cue sheets, and it's like 120 fucking plus cues, and I'm kind of like, okay, I'll fucking make it work. And it's, the scary thing, but it's also the fun thing, because then when you get handed something like that and you're able to make it work, especially on something that you're not typically, used to operating on, or that you haven't operated on in a little while. I know you have done gigs, outside of your home venue, and, you've done gigs not on like a tour schedule of a sense, but like one-off kind of things that aren't too far. How do you personally like doing stuff like that? Because I've only done like a very short stint of things, but I'm going to be asking everyone that I have come on the show. It's kind of like a tour or, one-off gig life versus a house gig life. Which would you prefer?
Yeah, so I mean, I can't speak a ton to the touring, because really I haven't toured. Like you said, I've done like, one-offs, and way back when I was first getting started, the closest I came to like touring is I was actually a guitar tech for like one of those Beatles tribute shows. And so but the furthest I went was, maybe Pennsylvania, Long Island, that. But really, I think I like the house gig, because you can really you make it your own. I think maybe the analogy is like, it's almost like renting an apartment versus like having your own house, like, sans the cost of it.
Yeah.
Because like at a rental, you're like, oh, I would love to, put this thing up there, but I'm like, I can't really put a giant hole in the wall here. I don't know in this place. So that's why I like the house gig, because you can, really, you can make it your own. You could say, hey, like, I like, my setup like this in front of house. I like, this monitor here, I'm going to, customize this rack how I like it. But that being said, I like the one-offs like here and there, because that's what keeps me on my toes, kind of being able to come in and be like, all right, I got like, this much time to kind of to make this my own for the night. Let's do it. And that's what, kind of, I think that really sharpens your skills when you're kind of like when you're thrown into it. And, you've got that, countdown to showtime where you've got to like just get it all going and then roll with it.
Hell yeah, man. And it's like, I know you stepped away from being more on the live side for a little while, and you were doing production managing and stuff for a little while. When you came back, how'd that feel?
Opportunity came up, and it was like, do you want to be a production manager? I was like, you know what? Let me give it a shot. It's more what I went to school for. It's more, I haven't, I've, dabbled in it and like helped out people like here and there, but never really, been given that position. I was like, cool, I'll give it a shot. And yeah, I mean, like I like to think I was, decent at it, but it came to the point where I was kind of like, honestly, just like really missing doing audio stuff. And I think what it came down to for me is, I kind of looked at it myself and I was like, really, I'm a creative person at heart. And, you've got painters and their outlet is the canvas. For me, like my outlet is the PA. It's art to me to be able to like, mix a show and, because every single show is different and it keeps you on your toes, and I missed that creative outlet. So yeah, so coming back to do an audio, I was kind of like, it felt like, being back home again, almost. It's, it was like, this is, the stuff I can do with my eyes closed and, I felt like, yeah, this is, I think everyone on this earth has a purpose. And I'm, some find it when they're, 10 years old, like I did. Some people find it when they're 60 years old. And I'm, so I'm fortunate to think I've found it early on and kind of realized, yeah, this is where I'm meant to be.
Hell yeah. That's, I think, one of my favorite things about our industry is that a lot of us come from so many different walks of life, and some of us, like you find it when you're young, and then, someone like me who found it right in my late teens, right at my early 20s. It was something that I didn't know where I could go, but we're just kind of like the island of misfit toys. And, we all have so much to bring in. It's having fun and jokes and stuff, like, when we've had plenty of gigs where it's been very interesting events have occurred. Were you at Flaming Lips, the first one where we had the unicorn and the giant mirror ball?
Oh no, I did the second time, but I remember hearing all about this.
Then were you at Phoenix? I think you were at Phoenix.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm not gonna lie, that particular show, I'll never forget. I'm standing on stage left, kind of like towards the downstage edge where usually like the snake box lives. And it's Ian and I, back when Ian was still like a hand with us. And that just says how long ago this was,
Right.
So that show, to put it in perspective for the people listening, the house rig for lighting, we had to have that get sucked up as close to the grid where everything is hung from, and then below that, motors were hung for a mirror wall that was suspended on a, I don't know, like 45, 50 degree angle, and then it basically reflected a LED riser. So the floor was clear and it was a riser that had wheels, but in that was built, LED panels or whatever the hell. So visually, it was fucking trippy as hell, because you're looking at it, dude, like looking at someone walk on it. I went, I don't know if they're walking upstage or downstage.
Mm-hmm.
And my brain hurts. What has been, I guess, some of your favorite shows that, you've done, whether it be at your main building or some of the other venues that you've worked at?
Yeah, I mean, Phoenix, that was definitely one of them, because that was also fairly early on, I want to say, in my time working there. And just to like come in, and I was like, this is insane. like this setup. And also just for me, like that's also just like a band that, man, like I remember when they really hit it big. Like I was probably maybe halfway through high school, I want to say, and I was like, man, this band like was freaking awesome. And then to be able to like work that show was like that was just insane. I think another one that had a similar experience was when Glass Animals.
I knew it. I was waiting for you to bring that up because I just remembered the giant pineapple that we had to hang and
Giant pineapple disco.
oh man, dude, I'm gonna see if I can find like some photos and videos that I have buried.
Well, that show I also like. I remember because obviously there's a what other shows have pineapple disco ball, but I remember also like being bummed because like I like saw on their tour they also had these giant GA letters, but we couldn't fit them through the door there. But that show also I remember because I think actually it was during the show all of a sudden they like end a song and they don't start the next one, and I'm like hearing chatter on radio like, oh, they like lost their monitors and like whatnot, and I go up on stage and yeah, literally their whole entire battery backup that had all their in-ear monitor transmitters on it and the monitor console, the whole thing just shit the bed middle of the show. And I'm looking over there and there's a bunch of tour guys just like elbow deep in their racks, like trying to just unplug everything from it so they can plug it right into the wall. And I was like, oh my God,
dude.
And it's like one of those things where it's like, all right, now time to get on your feet. And I'm like over there, I'm like, all right, here's a quad box here. This is hot. And then like they're in there. And of course, like, the guys at the shop that built this rack, never assumed this is going to happen.
So shit's zip tied.
It's exactly. Everything is zip tied in there. Like they're in there just trying to rip it all apart as quick as they can.
Fuckers. Or,
oh God, yes, that one.
Yeah, it's like I still
stage snake dies.
Yeah, so I was talking to I think it was Kyle because he was at Westville with us the other day. What exactly? Because it was like their feed from front of house to like they used their sub snakes as something.
Yeah, so they had a strange setup. They had a pair of these Avid S3Ls, which were like they didn't really take off. They were kind of like Avid's kind of in between step from their old profile venue series to their new S6L series that hadn't quite come out yet. So they're good consoles. They're compact and like whatnot. But anyway, yeah, they had a setup where they had front of house console, then had Cat 5 lines running to the stage, and then at that point it would hit their like monitor rack. But then they had another like cross stage rack that handled most of their inputs. That was like on stage right, so it was kind of this like 3-pointed path of data there. And yeah, I'm pretty sure the cable running from one side of the stage to the other, something just went bad in it, and that was enough to take the show down. But we weren't, you trying to diagnose it, you don't totally know. So I remember, I think it was you and me, middle of the show, bunch of people in the crowd, and we're there just like running a snake to front of house, like home running it, and we're like, excuse us, coming through.
Shows like that, and then there are shows that they go over, absolutely perfect that we've had. The second time we've had the Flaming Lips when you were there, it was just, that's a day where you have not just the house crew, us, who all operate extremely well together. You have a touring crew come through who are just on their shit. They know exactly how the day is going to go for them so that they know what to ask us. And, that's one thing that a lot of people, I feel like they lose in translation when they go to a house is they don't know how to know what to ask for to people because, we've heard stories from tours come through. They went, yeah, we were in, said state at said venue and it was an absolute nightmare because these hands didn't know what they were doing. And it's like, obviously we will never name tours, but, or crews, but I've had some nightmare instances, and it's like, I'm trying to think of where we've had, what did they had their hot pot grill thing backstage.
Oh, God. yeah. The act that had in our dressing room, like literally set up their own, like, hot plate right underneath the smoke detector and decided that was a good place to try and make some fried rice. And so trying to go in there, and they're all just standing there as the fire alarm was going off. And I'm like, yeah, you hear that sound? That means we got to get the hell out of here. And he's like, oh, well, I'm in the middle of making something. I'm like, yeah, we got to get the hell out.
It's like, hey, man, I'm just trying to make my lunch. And it's like, hey, man, I was just trying to, do our job for you guys. And you wanted to come back here. And, I get it. Trust me. I'm hungry all the time when we're on gigs. From, talking about nightmare situations, what would your, I guess, dream job or tour possibly be if you could pick maybe not just an act, but like what you would do in your field?
Yeah, honestly. So I guess for me, the first thing that comes to mind would be a front of house mixer for some kind of, one of the big acts that I just love their music. I guess the reaching for the stars would be like, man, if I was out there mixing like front of house for Taylor Swift, in a freaking stadium, actually, hang on, can you see here? This is
I was like, oh man, I saw that one
Taylor
first.
Swift is Jesus right there. My whole coworker got me that.
Love that.
But I'm a bit of a Swiftie. Actually, my now fiance and I went to the Eras tour maybe 2 or so years ago now, and I just was like blown away. Because for me, I was always I never liked going to see a show in like an arena or a stadium or something, because it was just like I always thought, it's like, this sounds like shit in here. This place was built for football, and the most you needed was to maybe blast some crappy music at halftime. But I went to that show, and that was like, I was so blown away at how clear and how amazing it sounded. And I was like, man, if I be able to be the guy sitting in that tent right there in front of the console, like, I think then I'd be like, okay, I'm good. This is the peak of my life right here.
Dude, it's like, I'm not really a big Taylor Swift fan, but the thing that I've told everyone they're like, yeah, well, obviously that makes sense. And I was like, no, I've listened to her music, and I can say that some of it's not bad. I can enjoy some of it, but I will also say her as a showman, as a musician, and as everything, she is fucking top notch, and she has treated her crew and everyone involved with so much respect, and has given and been so generous to them on top of that. Because, we've been in situations where hey, we're going to go do a one-off gig, but they only want to pay, half our normal day rate. But then you have someone like Taylor Swift, who is paying her drivers, double the rate that they had. And it's just a really nice thing to see, because there's not a lot of musicians, there's not a lot of tours that do that. When you went to see that show, like, I know there was an A and a B rig. I can't imagine what that production looked like, man.
Oh my God. And that was by far the most insane production value I've ever seen. And yeah, everything from just like the fact that you've got automation on the stage, where you've got these different lifts that literally are moving, and not like moving like at a snail's pace, like they're moving like up and down in the middle of the song. From that to the massive set pieces that they literally will, like, the middle of the main video wall on the stage like opens up in the middle, and everything funnels in like through that. To even like, just like, I'm like looking around and like trying to count like how many lighting fixtures there are, because there's like literally the whole catwalk out there. There was like literally a spot followed by like a wash, and going the whole like way there. And one of the cool things I remember for me was, since I saw it at Gillette Stadium, so there's no roof on there, and it was like a slightly cloudy night. So they would have this look where they've got their lights just point straight up in the air, and you look up and you literally see the pattern of the lights on the clouds in the sky.
Oh, that's freaking sweet, dude. Cool. Oh, I love that. It's so funny, because people in our jobs, in our industry, it's such a almost like double-edged bittersweet thing when we do go to shows, because
oh yeah,
bro, I tell my girlfriend all the time that it's I would love to go to a show and stuff, but we judge. We notice way more. We hear things, we see things, and we're just like, yo, what? Why?
Yeah, so my fiance, she does not work in this industry. She loves concerts, loves music. But yeah, we will go to shows, and I'll be the guy there sitting just like, looking up at the rig, like, looking, and she's like, the guys on stage right there. I'm like, I don't care about that. I'm looking what PA they got right now.
I want to not judge, but I can't help it. When you have a show that you're looking forward to working or something, and then you hear their mix, how tragic is it when, you're just like, God, that almost like classic, like never meet your heroes kind of thing, but it's just like, God damn it.
Yeah, there's definitely been a few, that I've like met along the way. Obviously, we're not naming names here, but I'd be like so excited. I'd be like, man, this guy's like either like, man, off stage like he's a dick, or on stage like, man, he doesn't sound at all like the record. But then there's also like then the side of like, hey, like the performer might be like great, but whatever, audio guy they've brought, I'm like, man, where did you find this guy? And there's definitely been shows where I'm standing in front of house and I'm just kind of like, I'm really hoping that this guy needs to go up and use the bathroom real quick. So I'll just, let me just fix all this.
When people ask me about the industry, it's I don't say that in a mean way that it's not meant for everybody, but it definitely is not meant for everyone.
They're definitely, and I found out pretty early on that there's like, and I think someone actually like said this to me, that like, there's people that get it and there's people that don't get it. And I remember like early on, that's like, when I was first starting gigs, and I had like, basically my boss at the time like told me like exactly that. There's people that get it and don't get it. And he's like, and you're the one that wants to get it,
Yeah, it's kind of one of those situations where it's you are the one that does all the hard work, but people will see you doing the hard work and see you put the time in, and that they're like, all right, this person actually, they want it. And that's, I think, the thing that a lot of people don't get in our industry is that it is a lot of very long, very hard, difficult days. And, you gotta trudge through a lot of stuff to get to the really good times.
Yep.
And when, you have someone asking you for tips and, tricks and advice and stuff like that, what are some of your top things that you give for, if they're wanting to know audio and stuff?
So one thing actually was just popped in my mind as we were talking about this is one thing I could say for audio specifically. Well, I guess maybe, and maybe this goes over lighting too, is that like, for me personally, if I know, that like this day I'm going to be like mixing front of house for this band, they don't have their own engineer, it's going to be me doing it. I pop on Spotify, I go to this is so-and-so, and I just, on my drive into work, I just pop that on and I listen, like, okay, this is the sound they're going for. Now I'm like, at least they're, more popular songs I'm familiar with. I can kind of know what I'm expecting. I know, listen to it. Okay, is this like, they doing a bunch of vocal effects in this band, or is it kind of like a dry mix? Is this a really, bass and drums, like, heavy, like driving stuff, or is this more of like a mellow kind of vibe? And I think that goes over into lighting a bit too, of like, you listen to it and you kind of know what you're expecting. And then also know, at least, if you've heard the kind of the big songs that they're probably going to close the show with, that's going to be your wow moments. You kind of, okay, like after this verse, they're going to a solo and they, I can go crazy on that and then come back to this. And yeah. So that's like one thing I would say is, definitely, kind of do your research almost, and see, what you're going into. I think one of the other things I would say is to just, immerse yourself like in a bunch of it, like I was saying earlier, if you can, if you've got the opportunity to, go into a venue on a dark day and just stand behind a console and just, that's, I think everyone has a kind of a different way of learning things. Like for me personally, I'm just like a trial and error kind of like thing. I'll be like, okay, I'm not the one that will read the manual at first. I will, figure out, and I'll get so far and be like, okay, well, now I can't figure out how to do this. And at that point, I'll be like, okay, Google, here's the manual for this, or go onto YouTube and find some guy doing a tutorial on it and then figure it out. Because I feel like for me, that's how I get it ingrained in my brain, is that like I've taught myself to this. I haven't been like, showing this is like how you do it. That's, I've physically done it. I'm like, okay, now it's stuck in there.
It's like you can have someone explain it, but unless you're doing it right then and there or working through the process of it, you're like, I'm going to forget that really quick.
Yep.
And then it's like, there's also on the flip side of, yeah, we have a bunch of, people asking for tips and tricks that are new. What is some advice that you would potentially give to some older heads who are kind of almost stuck in their ways? And, we know how we are as the younger generation. We're very much like, I may be more, lighting or stage or carpentry or whatever, but I'm here to help to put the show on. I'm going to help audio run their sub snakes, help you guys patch the stage.
Yeah. I think honestly, it's like embrace the technology that's here now. It's been invented for a reason. I think maybe a good analogy of it is like, if you're talking about cars, like you've got like an older guy that grew up, he's like, yeah, man, this thing's got like just a gas engine. There's no electronics. The steering is like straight to the wheels. And it's like, that's great and all, but like, I got this car now, it's got cameras in it. And like, it'll literally like brake for me if I'm about to like slam into the guy in front of me. Like, it's like, there's something to be said that, technology is there to help you, not hinder you,
Yeah, it's like embrace the change and realize that there's no reason how some people are. They're just very harsh when it comes to how they give directions, or that they're like, oh, I don't need help because if you help me, you're going to take my job. And it's like, no,
right,
man.
Yeah, it's not a weakness, but it's not.
It's not. There's no reason to gatekeep what we do. And that's one thing I feel a lot of people are very like closed off. They're like, all right, I have this position, I'm not going to share any knowledge or anything because then someone can come in and they could take it from me. I think that's something that our generation is kind of pushing out, and we're all coming in, and it's like, nah, man, the more knowledge we all know, the more we can help each other.
Exactly.
And I think that's something that kind of differentiates us from the older crews and, stuff like that. And that's what's, when we go to other calls, I love that they know that we're capable of that. And there are people who embrace that, and there are others who don't. But it's kind of, all right, you don't have to, but I want to see that change. So I'm going to, be that. When you have tours come through and when you're doing like production managing, what kind of tips would you give someone for, advancing or day of show things?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best thing you can do is do a good advance. Spend the time. And sometimes it's hard because I've dealt with it where this tour's just not getting back to me. They're really bad on email or something. But to the best you can, cover your bases. For me, like I had essentially like just like a checklist of like everything from make sure that you're on the same page as when showtime is, because I've had that where like they're like, oh, well, here's our schedule. I'm like, we gotta know. Be like, well, hang on, it's a 7:30 show, not an 8 o'clock show. So let's back that up. Just attention to detail on that, because the last thing you want is like to come to that show day and then go, oh shit, everyone's tickets say 7:30, but the show's at 8, or actually worst case it'd be vice versa. They're gonna start before everyone's like there or something, and so like nipping that in the bud early on is huge. I think also when it comes to like the day of, the smile goes a long way. When they first show up, the first words you say mean a lot. My first always be like, hi there, welcome to Connecticut. How's everybody doing? How's your drive up? Whereas, I've definitely seen people that like, someone steps out of the bus. Hey, you got to back the bus up a few more feet here. We're blocking like this. Like, no, you don't. You start on, put your best foot forward. You get what you give back. If you're putting off the good vibes, there's a much higher chance that you're going to get the good vibes back.
Dude, that's like as we, you and I both know, the production manager that we had at the venue that you and I met at, Tim, shout out to Tim Burke.
What, Tim?
Oh, fucking Timmy boy. I have him actually as a guest later this month.
Well, it's great. Like, so, I was talking about like that checklist for advancing. It's basically like Tim, who I essentially stole that from, because I like saw his advances like back when it was like, I like how this is categorized. It's a good idea. I'm gonna borrow that idea.
Dude, it was so funny because, Lorenzo and the boys, they all kind of stepped away from doing this. And when I came to College Street and I got to work with Tim, because I had met him at Klein, which was the venue that I first started at, and he was going to be there in the gentleman who was the head there as like the head carp or whatever. He wanted Tim to kind of step into that role, but then Tim got offered the College Street gig and he went and did that. Like the vibe, like you were saying, bro, that is such a giant thing that so many people don't really realize. It's not like make or break, because you can have a day where everyone's just kind of like kick back, no one really gives a fuck. It's like rule 1, do our job safe and efficient. Rule 2, have fun.
Exactly.
And it's like so many people would love to do what we do. They may not understand the things that go behind getting to where we are. But I was talking to somebody the other night and they went, this is my favorite show of the year. I wish every show had this feeling. And I went, well, here's a little bit of something. The way I look at it is every show is like that, just not to us. We do all of the hard work that we do behind the scenes before the show to help the crew and the band have the best possible day that they have, because again, if the vibe is good and we're there to make their day as easy and good as possible, that's going to reflect in the day and in the show.
Oh yeah.
And it's like greeting someone at the top of the day, like you were saying, with a hey, morning, how are you, how was your drive in kind of thing, rather than like, hey man, like you're a little too close to X, Y, and Z, I need you to move your shit over. I've had tours come in where they're up here and I let them say their thing, and I went, all right, no offense, man. I'm like, you're up here. I understand you had a rough day yesterday. We're a new day. We're a new place. Let's start over. Hi, I'm Logan.
Yeah.
I'm here to make your day as easy as possible. What's going on, my dude? And doing that honestly diffuses so many things, and it's something that, like, I think the experience of being in it, especially for how long you have, is something that pays the dividends in that, it really reflects.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, and I think also too, it's, your demeanor throughout and your attitude like toward it, like it goes such a long way. If you're viewing it more that, we're working together, I'm working with you, instead of you're working for me or I work for you or like something, it goes a long way.
Dude, it's like I don't really like the term boss. It's like we're, someone is the lead because that role exists as a lead. But I don't think anyone ever needs to walk into a day with their, their chest puffed up like, oh, I'm better than so and so because I'm coming from this building and I'm doing this and I was on this tour. And it's like, hey man, bro, I'm pushing the box the same way you are.
Exactly. Yeah, and honestly, and I think we were talking about before, kind of just like days from hell where, either stuff isn't working on, our end or the tour's end or something. And what makes a difference is like the attitudes of it. Like if you're like, okay, let me help you with that. Or like, and it's like, hey, it's all good. But if you are suddenly, something isn't working and the first thing you're doing is like pointing the finger and playing the blame game. I'm like, I'm not here for that, man. I'm here to get it to work. And so, that's how you can turn a hell day into a good day, is with a good attitude at it.
Oh, dude, it's like I've had instances where, hey, we need to, make this move during the show. It's, moving risers or moving something, and I'm just kind of like, dude, that's gonna be all right. That's gonna be a little difficult. And then they're like, well, we always do this, and I'm just kind of going, I understand that. Just give me a minute to figure out how I can accommodate that for you to the best of my ability. And that's where it's like, again, advice to both new and old heads is kind of like every day is different. You were saying embrace the technology, embrace the change. It's kind of like embrace that every single venue and every single show is going to be different, and you're going to have different crews. And it's like you have to kind of also dictate that pace, because if you're like a tour guy, or if you're a house guy, if you see that the tour is a little frustrated, you kind of got to look at your guys and be like, hey, it's going to be a little bit of a rough day. Just kind of tread lightly. If anything happens, come to me. Don't pop off.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's one thing I was thinking earlier too, is like, as frustrating as it might be to deal with someone who's like incompetent, or like, you don't think what they're doing is how you would do it, bite your damn tongue. Once you go and you're like in your car at the end of the night, or once you're like in some, back office with the door closed with your buddies, they'll be like, these fucking idiots. But in front of them, you gotta be like, sure, yep, you got it.
Yep.
And I think that's one thing too also, is that, I think one motto for me a bit is like, I don't think there should ever be like a no answer. I mean, you could say no if something's like literally like unsafe, by all means.
Yeah.
But like, I for me, it's like, okay, we can't do that, but here's what we could do instead. It's not just like, no, can't do that. Kind of, work with them. There shouldn't always be a no answer. There should be a no, but we could do this.
Exactly. There's always a solution. It may not be exactly how, they originally wanted it, or how the advance is, but the thing is, that classic saying of the show must go on is so true.
Oh yeah. And you run into that a lot, it's because that's the interesting thing I think about this industry and like touring, is that, there are no two venues that are identical. Everything is different everywhere you go. Like even to the point of like, a giant stadium tour. Like, yeah, you're setting up the same rig, but like it's still a different place. You still got, it's not exactly the same size. You're not parking in the exact same place. Stuff's different. You got to go with the flow, and there's always going to have to be, compromises, because as he said, the show's got to go on.
It's like we've had shows. There was one show where it went from solo to the trio to the full band with the full production, and it's just kind of like, okay, well, that not what I expected, but okie dokie then. And you just make it happen.
It is.
And it's kind of the fun, difficult, but also the really exciting part about it when everything is different like that. And that's kind of the one thing when I tell people, it's like, hey, it's chaotic, it's crazy. If you like your weekends, this ain't for you. If you like your holidays, this ain't for you. Mm-hmm. And it's like, and if you don't have a, friends, family, partner who understands kind of like what this world really is, and that you're sometimes I will be home for, 2 weeks straight, and then I'm going to be slammed for a month and a half. So I got to get it while I can, because that's the gig life.
Exactly.
We're kind of overglorified gypsies, man.
That's precisely it. But at the same time, I always think like, it's not a desk job. You're not, and like, I don't think I could ever do that. I couldn't go and like sit at a cubicle in front of the same mouse and keyboard every day and basically just rinse and repeat and just be doing that. That's no fun to me.
Nah, dude, it's like, I'll never forget. We had just a long, chaotic day, and it was rough. And, very much like how we were saying earlier, you wait, you keep your comments to yourself until you are in a place where you are with people that, you're out of the earshot of other people. You know, you're in your little sanctuary spot, you're in your car, whatever the hell. It's the end of the night and everyone's gone home. And I'm just kind of going, God damn it, this fucking shit, son of a freaking God. And Thor looks at me and just goes, shut up, you know you love it. And I just kind of paused and went, yeah.
Heck yeah. Chose this life.
Yeah, man, I fucking do love it. And it's, I don't know, it's not, like we said earlier, it's not meant for everyone, but when you find it, and if someone really wants to put in the time and the effort into it, it can really turn into something absolutely just fucking beautiful. And it can lead to so many fun things. And, you know, we've gotten to do so many gigs together, and we've gotten to, you know, go to other venues, and we've gotten to all work together and do all these crazy things and make these crazy shows happen. And that's something that, you know, it's shit, man. Like I said, we get paid to make that happen.
Yeah, it can be really rewarding. You know, you might slave for the first 12 hours of the day, but then that like show comes and you see like the audience just roar. And so like, you're like, all right, this is why we do it.
Yeah, man. It's, you know, that's really the thing. You know, when I call house to show, that's my favorite moment. And, you know, I guess we'll start to wrap it up, but on, you know, I guess some final comments. What is your favorite moment of the night when we are doing a show?
I think, you know, that's a good question, honestly. I was going to say first, like, it's like, you know, when that first beat happens, but I then started thinking, like, honestly, for me, it's that moment between, like, the end of the set and the encore, I think, because it's kind of like, you know, like, all right, like, that's like when the audience is like most like at their peak, you know, and, you know, but you're kind of, that's that, what's the word? Kind of like when you wake up, but you're not quite awake yet.
Kind of like a daydream state, like,
yeah,
something like that. Like, kind of like a Twilight Zone or
exactly
limbo, like almost like a limbo.
Yes. Yeah. Just so like you're about to, you know, go in and start your loadout, but, you know, the show's not quite over and you're kind of just like, you know, that's the moment like I savor, you know?
Yeah, I feel that. It's like when I call house to show, I think that's that moment for me. You know, I you know, house music fades, lights change, and that fucking crowd hits and they shriek and the band walks out, man. And we see everything we did that day, the hard, the easy, you know, all of it. And it's just so worth it in the end. And yeah, man, shit, it's just almost like a thank you to the tour for allowing us to be a part of that.
Yeah. It's like, it could, like I said before, it can be so rewarding because you actually like, you see the final product, you know, which like, you know, it's a lot of other industries and even other like jobs within this industry. Like if you're like, say, a shop guy, you know, you're prepping this stuff, but then you're kind of like saying, okay, have fun with it, you know. But for us, you know, we're bringing it in, you know, building it, doing the show, and then like you see the fruits of your labor like come to life right in front of your very eyes, like within, you know, the same day. It's really something.
It really is, man. Blake, thank you so much, man, for taking some time out to just, you know, come and chat and be my first guest on, you know, It's Call Time. I'm really excited to start to have some of you guys, you know, that I've gotten to work with over the years and show, you know, you guys and what we do to the world, because I think what we do is not underappreciated, but it's so under the radar to so many people. And, you know, I want to show the fun that we have and we've made over these years and these cool shows together. I want to show that. And yeah, man, it's been a fucking pleasure having you on.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Can't wait till, you know, maybe we'll have you come back after we have another busy fall and some stuff.
Oh yeah, I'd love to.
Hell yeah. All right, guys. That's going to be it for It's Call Time. Thank you, everyone, for listening on Spotify, Apple, whatever the heck, podcasts, YouTube, everything. Blake, thank you again for coming through and hanging out. Guys, have a good rest of your day, and I will see you next time. Later.